This is a Damien Television Productions presents. Welcome to Are You Afraid of the Creepypasta Tales? Episode 9. The Magic School Bus. The Lost Episode. Don't worry about who I am. If you really want to know about me, just know that I'm risking a lot by posting this creepypasta. If you had a childhood, regardless of when you were born, you should remember the cartoon The Magic School Bus. It was a children's cartoon show in the 90s, where a crazy science teacher would take students on weekly adventures into places such as into space or through the human digestive system. It was a rather harmless and educational show, which is the reason why have been permanently shown to children since its premiere. What most people don't know about the show, it was meant to fit into a line of horror stories for kids in a show that was never made, titled Horror is Alive. The show, much like the Goosebumps television show, was about harmless horror stories, with 3 being shown in 1 episode. Despite this, the first episode underwent a complete overhaul during its production. Was it to be the opening short was extended to full episode length? After the writer and director of the episode went through a long, hard experience with illegal substances, which inspired the middle and end of the short, which coincidentally is where the short takes a drastic turn. Everyone else, or at least most everybody else, were severely scared due to the experiences making it. Most quit after reading the script, but others were in desperate need of a job. Whether if they were animators or more executives. I don't know. A whole first season was written, but completely abandoned after the first screening, with the final blow being when the scripts were destroyed in what was PBS Studios headquarters, after Aronist, who is now believed to be the writer of the episodes again and director of this episode, obliterated the building. A few who rated the scripts claimed to say they were either too gory to air or too unnerving for children to enjoy watching. These people wish to remain anonymous, and even remain scared to this day. The first episode wasn't even ready to air before the concept spiraled horribly out of control and terrified test audience. Originally planned by PBS, it was designed by Malicinity Animation Studio in Russia, and through the original plot, episode was partly animated in Russia. Before the first screening in the original episode, the doubting school children were brought into a school bus. It originally did not have eyes that transformed to a spacecraft and brought them into space, but strange things began to happen. There was the only description the people attending the screen had, so that you had no real expectations for it. After the screening, PBS took the original idea back to the storyboards, fired everyone behind the pilot's production, and remade it with well-known employees, obviously, into the Magic School Bus. This episode was sent to me in a cardboard box, but one of my online friends, who simply gave me his first name, Sergey. Sergey was one of the employees during the late 80s and the latter half of the 90s. His job was merely just checking to make sure the VHS copies of the animations were distorted or any lesser quality than the first generation VHS tape. He never told me this until I expressed interest in his old job, which triggered her to spill everything. He is much older than me, at 43 years old. The method that he used them have obtained this episode was simply sneaking into the Mr.Mr animation studio, which is now merely a shoemaking factory, and breaking through the safe and what was then where the animation was processed, which was untouched. Most of the old animations designed by the studio were there. The episode was hard to find, but due to him having seen the original copy when it's sent to him, could identify it. As such, the episode starts normally. The recut includes the original PBS episode 1, but the music is different, with an infinitely descending ship-hard tone replacing the happy intro. The title screen was merely black. Well, I can't read Russia. Over what must be English titles that says, "The Sad Bus." After some research, I found out that it actually says I cannot breathe, which makes a bit of sense, considering it takes place in outer space, of course. The version I obtained was a recut. Despite the fact it was the original tape, apparently, after the horrific reaction, the writer for Horror is Alive, and the director of this suspicious episode, in a pout, took the tape and not attempted to edit out everything it deemed unsavory by the test audience, but quit after 3 scenes and collapsed. I'm guessed that the recut didn't include the bus eyes, but I'm not sure whether it's a layering mistake or nothing makes much more sinister, due to the fact that 2 of the student characters, Carlos and Dorothy Ann, have no eyes. I mean, they are there, but their eyes are missing, and no one mentions it. The bus also looks much more sinister because the front lights were normal on the first glaze, were still eye-like, and almost like a human's eyes, while literally frozen, and the grill of the bus just looks extremely sad, like it's a constant frown. The voice work is also different, when its sense of sorrow and blended uncomfortableness in American actor voices. In the PBS edition, Arnold's cousin Janet that Mrs. Frizzle is boring, so Arnold has the teacher take them into space. In this episode, going into space is where things become very messed up. Nothing in the original episode was here. Instead, the bus transforms into a spaceship, kind of like one that you see in a film like 2001, A Space Odyssey. There's no transition. It just becomes this. The walls are all white, and there seem to be infinite corridors in the step drops. From the outside, it looks like a Soviet space rocket, which still makes sense due to this being animated in Russia, but larger. Arnold comments that this wasn't what he expected and wants to go home. Janet and Carlos also seem equally confused, but Janet is smiling. Mrs. Frizzle says that will be an override lock on the ship, and no one can leave until it's reached to its destination. We are hurtling toward the sun. Mrs. Frizzle tells anyone that she can turn off the airlock and suffocate everyone, only jokingly, before saying that she will put in a maximum override. But it will take 6 months to reach Earth. After this, the screen begins distorting as the picture goes out of focus, in a similar fashion to how the max headroom hijacking went into the transmission during Doctor Who. An out-of-place sideshow then played over that, which sounds like an autistic version of the Star Wars theme. The only pictures that were shown are that of plants, with only each picture imaginally having some subliminally hidden disturbing human elements across the planet being shown. Basically, imagine the planet Jupiter having angry-looking human eyes melted into it, realistically, but not something too out of the ordinary of the skilled workshop user to have created. She suggests that everyone go into Stasis' ship with cancerous sword has developed in Mrs. Frizzle's face that nobody mentions. However, Mrs. Frizzle mentions that there is now 6 Stasis beds, and there are 11 people, including herself. She told them that she'll be fine staying up for 6 months, but one of the students have to stay up as well. Raphael suggests they draw straws. They do so, and Arnold is determined to be the one who has to stay up. Now, up to this point, the episode was bafflingly strange. But this is where the show descends into realms that I couldn't make up if I tried. After everyone goes into Stylus' sleep, Mrs. Frizzle tells Arnold that originally there were 30 students in the class, but 30 of them died. She tells Arnold that she is going into the upper airlock where there's a separate bed, and she's only told the students had less beds because she didn't want to face the idea that one person would be alone for 6 months. In addition to this, the time frame for returning home was actually 2 years. She leaves and locks the door behind her from the outside. After this scene, the same distortion affection occurs, as the long string of texts appears saying, "But what about Janet?" several times. You could tell that time was passing by only because Arnold became more dirty as time passed. The 9 beds lined the walls, and the porthole windows along with the control plant is deactivated. But Jesse, don't you see I'm reading a Creepypasta? Yes? The food that was left for him sits in one corner of the room and tries to ration it, but it only lasts him 1 month. He also have no means of a bathroom, so he urinates and defecates on the floor. After about 2 minutes, 2 months have passed, and Arnold is looking noticeably nervous and disheveled, yet hopeful. He is extremely hungry, more so than he ever been. Raphael's catchphrase, "I think I'm gonna be sick," begins to play repetitively over the music track. I think it was meant to reflect Arnold's mind, but then Mrs. Frizzle begins to talk. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Arnold now realized the apprentice's teeth faces. He won't survive 2 years in this environment, and if he tries to kill himself by smashing a porthole window, he'll kill his other students. "You didn't leave me enough food," Arnold screams as his voice begins to crack. Several quick cuts from the spaceship in 2001 place about as rapidly as human eyes can blank. The voice began to grow darker and more tinged and set in deeper. "Oh, but Arnold, I did." The animation does a long slow pan across the room with that looks like a stylization of a wide-angle lenses, pointing out the bed. And then the voice change. "I am extremely extraordinary nervous system. This is no hallucination. Arnold, I am you." It says, the weirdest and most convincing thing about the animation of the original episode is that Arnold looks very similar to Mrs. Frizzle. One would think they were related. They both have pale skin, orange hair, and represent nerds. Even their mannerisms, aside from Mrs. Frizzle's greater achieved sense of confidence, are similar. The voice began to whisper, "Eat them." Mrs. Frizzle slowly melts into the background as Arnold's body parts slowly begin to shimmer. While seemingly growing subtly added scars, Arnold had attempted to analyze the space chart over the control panel for some time, but only now realizing that he's intentionally trapped here didn't make sense. The path wasn't leading to Earth. It was heading for a malformed black hole that was strangely appeared to the left of the moon. Through whatever means, the room also became increasingly hot. So much so that Arnold had to take off all but his underwear. The unclean environment was forcing him to develop more scars and sores as he slept on his side in the mat before realistically taking Carl from the bed so he could sleep there at night. That was when he made the horrible realization that none of them were breathing. Mrs. Frizzle hadn't put them in two statuses. He efficacious them. It was the only after he had made his realization that his scalpel appeared near the door. Someone had opened it while he was sleeping and moved the bodies around. The words "Barrett C. Hope" were scrawled in ink on the wall in marker. The increasing need to eat was more apparent now than ever. He looked at Phoebe. He secretly loathed her. This became all the more apparent as he took the scalpel and slowly cut into her belly. He was not at all he is now. The scene is the most disturbing because the angle never changes. The expressions is always angry with cartoon stylish eyebrows. For an entire 60 seconds, he slices her open, eats her lungs and intestines, peels and eats her skin, then moves onto the face, slicing off eyebrows and nose, leaving a shaved skeletal corpse as the camera time lapses. The animation is different here. It's more specific, more layered and more medical looking. Now the various cancerous sores are visibility on Arnold's face as well. This next day, the scalpel is removed. For the next month or so, he picks on the remains of Phoebe. The next time lapse seems more messed up because now Arnold seems to have begun to hit puberty, and he has nipples on the ears and fingers of every student except Janet because it's his cousin. The scalpel appears again, this time with the words "Ardmore scarred" written on the wall. Arnold talks to himself frantically. What does this mean? What does that mean? He picks up the scalpel and decides who to eat next. He never liked Carlos either. As he undresses Carlos and begins to slice on him, the student ID falls out of his pocket. He says, "Carlos Roman, immoral scored, Carlos Roman." It was an anagram, just as Brett sees hope. Barrett sees hope. It was an anagram for Phoebe Terrace's name. But now the episode is almost over and the screen begins to flicker as Arnold starts to gasp for air. You knew. Arnold begins to cry. The animation gets very choppy at this point. Two different shots are seen. And one, the school bus collides with the sun. And in another, Arnold continues to eat the remaining students in order based on the anagram instructions. Since it's time lapse, you could only see the bodies and the bones begin to pile up. He refuses to eat Janet, his cousin, before ultimately slicing his neck and scalp and killing himself. His cancerous sores enveloped his corpse. Another scene was supposed to appear, but it was cut. The final shot before it ends is the words, "You're gonna go bonkers, 1988. That phrase, to my knowledge, means nothing. The Renegade films begins to deteriorate before the Russian words appear. This translates to whatever happened to Janet. There's nothing else. The ship enters a black hole and no credits. Arnold's profusely scared for 3 minutes that he couldn't breathe as the burning noise began to envelop the back layer track. It goes on for a full 3 minutes. I tried figuring out what happened to Janet, but the only real clue is it is supposed in the animation itself. I tried finding about the origins online, which I supposed to succeed in doing. Only found out about it through articles about it on the deep web, in a very old post on 4chan with 2 replies which expressed skepticism due to lack of evidence. I didn't want to upload footage of the VHS onto YouTube, Vimeo, or even Dailymotion because the gore and disturbing imagery was obviously going to get me flagged or banned or on any of those sites. Sergey stopped messaging me everywhere. I had him as a friend. I put the VHS up on eBay before being hit by a $6,000 notice from a PBS company. I got a very threatening email that told me my life as a professional contractor and plumber was basically over if I ever released that VHS to the public, to the general public. They insisted that it was merely a prank regarding some of the employees working on this show having fun. But I knew that the backstories, this voiceover actors, Sorrel, the Russian text, the attention to detail, and the matching details regard to backstories in the actual tape was all too much evidence to believe this. I told him that I had destroyed the tape, the harassing phone calls and letters affectionately addressed to Super Messy Face Mario, as eventually my plumbing profession has ruffled the feathers of some of my higher ups. They weren't clear that it would happen if I continued. Besides, that it would suddenly ruin my life layer by layer. I still have the tape though. It's in my old college stuff. I sit there for days. Days will become weeks. Months will be late, and then years, and the tape will still be sit there. They will pry from my cold, dead messy hand. But there's only one question that remains on my mind. What happened to Sergey? Alright, that is Magic School Bus, the lost episode. Wow, that's just weird. It reminds me of the Russian sleep experiment Creepypasta. I would do that one day, but this is a Magic School Bus Creepypasta. The one that makes that makes no sense is the details about the episode. The PBS people who made the show with the Russian animators it's different in the Creepypasta than the actual show that was more kid friendly than there was in the original pilot episode. It's pretty good executed though. I hope that is so weird that the Creepypasta about a magic school bus, it's pretty weird. Oh, so I hope you enjoyed episode 9, and episode 10 will be the death of Mr. Burns. I hope you enjoyed episode 9, and I'll see you in episode 10. Has been a Damien Lack Home Television Productions. Thank you and subscribe.